Namaste, everyone. I would like to discuss about the inner child in a relationship. Our inner child is joy, contentment, fulfillment. Our inner child is quite courageous and fearless. Our inner child represents our creative expansion and creative destiny. So in a relationship, our inner child is looking to be nurtured, is looking to be inspired, right? Like children in school, they love to learn new things, right? And our inner child is looking for creativity, right? To be received and to give, right? And as we uncover our shame, judgment, feelings of not being good enough, that confines and even cages our inner child, and as we begin to reconstruct our lives from our childhood wound, right, which it could be a shame, it could be judgment, feelings not being good enough that was programmed into us at a very young age. It could be presented to us in a very indirect way, where we are the product of a household where our mother has a lot of shame, our father is quite judgmental, right? So he is, very hard on himself, very hard on the mother. Therefore there's a lot of anger, built up frustration, right? Destruction, right? Self-destruction. So shame, judgment, and feelings of not being good enough is self-destruction, right? And a lot of us, part of this human experience is that we are presented with that early on in life, right? When we're our ego is not fully developed. So we're exposed to it when we're very vulnerable, right? As a child, right? So we really, we're very soft, right? We're very gentle, right? Because we haven't yet developed the character. And some children, they're fortunate because they have past lives of building up character, right? Where, you'll see, 5-year-olds, standing up for themselves, right? Against a teacher who says, I don't like your art, right? Or you're not a singer, right? And they'll stand up and they'll say, no, I am a singer, right? That's character, right? Character is courage. Character is creativity, right? So that has to do with our ego. The ego has to do with self, right? Where you have a sovereignty, where you're not taking things so personally, right? And that's our freedom, right? And ego can give us freedom because, on this, in this world, we have all kinds of programs that want to kind of get into your mind and take you for a ride, right? And a lot of these programs on this planet, very self-destructive programs. So you have to have an ego to be able to have boundaries and discernment, know when to say no, right? Because without that ego, we can be quite foolish. We can be quite fooled, right? And we can be the fool, right? And ego is developed in later years, right? For a young person, ego is developed in later years, around, you could say, some individuals, their ego is not even fully developed or in their 20s, right? But usually in high school, when we're starting to have the social interaction, when we're starting to understand difference in myself versus my neighbor, my friend, right? And the different sort of social economic, the different type of religions, that's when we start to identify with who I am versus you, right? I versus you, right? But the inner child is very strong within us, right? Basically, we are that inner child until we start to, input the ego, because we have to, right? We need instinctual, intuitive, protective mechanisms in order to not just survive, but to really block off and to clear out any programs that may be introduced into the system that will cause us to self-destruct, right? So we definitely need ego on this planet. But the inner child is from zero. I see from 0 to 9 years old, right? 0 to 9 years old is the time where I see the child is in the ma frequency, the mother, right? Matters of the heart. And then, from 9 going up, it's about the father, right? It's the raw. It's about being, connecting with the world, right? The masculine is about connecting with the world. The mother is about the moon, connecting with what is inside. So 0 to 9 years old, everything is inward, right? We're being introduced, slowly, going to, kindergarten, first grade, these type of things. And we're being exposed to society through our friends and seeing our friends' parents. And our friends' parents are different. They're different ethnicity, right? They have a different nationality, they have different religion, they dress different, right? They have different accent than me, right? So the masculine I versus you begins to come into place after ages 9 moving forward, right? Especially a child who is introduced to a school system that is most likely you have cultural diversity, right? For those kids who have cultural diversity, such as myself, I feel the ego is a lot more expansive. And then a lot of schools, like, if you go in the South, like Tennessee, where you don't have cultural diversity in some, southern areas, small towns type of thing, where your ego can become very, very inflexible, right? Your identity can be very inflexible, right? While cultural diversity actually really expands and invites in multiple perspectives, right? Like for myself, I had friends that, a lot of large Asian community, a large Middle East community, all kinds of, Latino community, African American community. There was a lot of intermingling of different voices, right? That really, that's how our ego thrives in many ways, right? Through being able to connect with different perspectives and different voices, right? So our inner child in the 0 to 9 is when I do meditations on inner child or do inner child work, right? It's really, we're connecting to, I see the 5 to 9 year old self, right? And the 5 to 9 year old self is the inner child, right? We're very soft, we're very gentle, we're very sincere, and we're very heartfelt. That's the time when we are very close to the moon, right? Which the moon represents the mother, but also the mother to ourselves. So that can be the animals, right? 5 to 9 year old self, like for me, I'm like, I'm like horses, like, the mother, right? It's the mother energy. The moon is about, I'm connected to the animals, I'm connected to the plants, right? As a 5 to 9 year old self, I'm connected to the stars, right? So there's a sense of being very earthy. Your inner child is very earthy, it's very down to earth, it's very curious, right? And yet very very embodied. So in relationship, our inner child, do we ask ourselves, does this relationship really nurture my inner child? Because that's very important, because in a relationship you want joy, right? Right, we want right, we want a relationship that doesn't have joy. That's like, doesn't seem any fun, right? We want joy, and part of joy is about the inner child feeling safe first, right? You have to feel safe, and how inner child feels safe with ego as defense, right? Is trust is earned through courtship, right? And courtship is I see it as a rite of passage of relationship, right? And in many ways, especially in, I live in the United States of America, the West, I deconstructed a lot of the courtship, right? I don't really hear much about courtship within, younger generations. Of course, in older generations, there are all kinds of stories about, courtship. And I don't really hear much of that in the kind of younger generation of just this, Tinder stuff and just online stuff and this kind of sort of rush that we have, rushing into things, rushing out of things, these terminologies when it comes to relationships where we're just unavailable, kind of trying to be available but confused, right, at the same time. So, and then feeling depressed, and then feeling hurt, and then feeling attached, and then not knowing how to detach, and that kind of thing, right? So, your inner child, we all have an ego, right? And the ego is how we really, to how we really can soothe the ego, right? Because ego wants to be soothed, right? Is through courtship. Trust, respect is earned, right? Trust and respect is earned, right? And so your character, which character is defined as being determined, being reliable, dependable, right? Committed and consistent. That's really character, right? Reliable, dependable, committed, consistent. And that's courtship, right? You're investing your time and energy and effort into something because you want to learn and you want to grow. And learning and growing is not just, grab in, grab out, and that kind of confusion that we create. To grow and to learn is actually to study someone. It's to support, them and yourself in this connection, right? Just like any subject of interest, I mean, the individuals who really want to learn and grow in this subject of interest, they understand that it does take a character to be able to do well in the subject, right? It's just, and courtship is like when you're learning to play the piano, you're courting the piano. When you sit down, you're like, piano, I'm going to practice for 1 hour, right? Or I'm going to practice 30 minutes every day, right? And that you're courting the piano. You're appreciating the piano. You are wanting to uncover and discover, how beautiful the piano is, right? And that's the same thing in relationships. And that's the same thing about our inner child's perspective, right? And just like the piano, when we're courting, sometimes we get frustrated, right? We're learning how to read music, and we can get very frustrated, and then we can get like a fight with our piano. We're like, I'm never going to play you again. But character is always that, I return calmly back to this because, I want to continue to learn and grow, right? Because I find you, piano, very, very, very inspirational, right? And I know that it's going to help me to really step more into my creativity, right? So, the inner child in relationship is asking yourself, we can ask, ask yourself, or you can ask the mama bear, right? The mama bear, which we all are, Papa Bear, Mama Bear. You could be that for yourself, and you just ask, is this relationship, again, you'll be learning lessons that'll be hard, but also there can be lessons that you don't need to learn, right? Lessons that frankly are just, inviting in self-destruction programs that you don't need, right? And this never-ending cycle of hurt, this never-ending cycle of pain, and all that kind of stuff. These are lessons that we initially go into to learn, right? To learn boundaries and discernment. But once we really kind of have that sort of awakening where we're actually asking the question, I'm no longer interested in these pains and this hurt and this, constant, these type of relationships, right? When you're asking that, basically you're opening up to your inner child, and you're saying, inner child, what kind of relationship do you want? And your inner child will say, well, I want a relationship that's inspirational, right? I want a relationship I can support and that's supportive, right? I want joy. And, in joy, just like courtship and earning respect and trust and building up character within the relationship, it's not necessarily going to be easy, but the life lessons they're enjoyable, even when you're, kind of like, oh my gosh, like, right? Like, oh, I don't want to do this, but you keep going. It's not these type of life lessons where you are just kind of sort of destroying each other, right? So I just wanted to talk about the inner child and how we can connect with our inner child. I call the inner child like the mama bear, papa bear, right? And you have a mama bear in you, you have a papa bear, and you have a baby bear in you, right? And in many times when we become an adult, right? Of course, we're not in the space of our biological mother, right? Or if we don't have a mother or a father, then the mama bear and papa bear is everything to do with your inner child, and the baby bear has to do with your joy. And sometimes the mama bear will give you it will encourage you, right? Mama bear encourages the baby bear, right? Papa bear gives the baby bear tough lessons, like you gotta be strong, right? Or you have to have boundaries and discernment. So you have life lessons that will, in many ways, it will seem painful initially, but once you really return back to the sort of basic experience you want to have in a relationship, which is joy, you'll start to be firm about no or yes, right? And you'll start to be firm also with your inner child when it comes to relationship. The inner child, like I said, when you're building up your character, your self-esteem, your self-worth as a young person, 5 to 9, our self-worth or self-esteem is very high. And then the shame, the judgment, feelings of not being good enough, it's like disappointment after disappointment, and then we slowly start to take on a more self-destructive patterning relationship with ourselves, right? And then we have to deprogram and reconstruct ourselves, right, in adult years. And some of us don't really recover from our own early self-destruction, right, due to these programs. But the inner child in a relationship really gets us back to the basics. And I think the learner's mind of the inner child is what makes relationships so sacred and so adventurous, and it brings so much expansion and growth, because there's these layers, like the inner child. When you're 5 to 9, like, you understand there's so much layers and layers and layers to all the things you can learn, so you're quite enthusiastic, right? Because like, you go into a library, right? You walk past the library every day on your way to class, and you just see all the books, and you just know there's just so much to learn, right? So there's a sense of openness to traveling into yourself, traveling into another, listening and being heard, right? And even when you travel into an area of study, right, that seems this is very challenging, like a very challenging read. Like for me, Harry Potter was very challenging for me to read, and all the characters and stuff was like right? But there's a kind of character you build when you allow yourself to develop a quality in the way that you interact with this challenge, right? Such as for me, with Harry Potter, I would compare myself to other people who would read like 5 chapters in a night, and I'd be like barely like 10 pages, because I read it over again and several times. So I learned patience. That's a quality, right? That's a quality. That's a good quality. Patience. That can be a virtue, right? So and that's the thing with the partner. It's like you get an opportunity to develop these qualities amongst the challenges. But when we're talking about challenges in relationships where you are just frankly feeling stuck with somebody, you're feeling like hurt and pain in this never-ending cycle of back and forth, and they possess these qualities that in many ways are self-destructive, right? We talk about people unavailable, people who are just frankly not ready for love, or people who are very disconnected from themselves, right? They're very numb within themselves, right? And therefore, we're, there's these impulsive, sort of reckless words that are said to us that, really bring us out of our self-esteem and self-worth, right? Those are the type of things we need to say no to. And that's what Mama Bear would say. Papa Bear would say that too. Say no, right? Anything that is going to sort of downgrade your self-esteem, your self-worth, that's a no, right? And everybody has their growth, and self-esteem and self-worth for this planet is something we need to work on, tremendously, right? But partnership is about mutual decision to support and to be supportive and to grow with somebody and to be willing to listen and to willing to be heard, right? And that does really require an individual to really participate, right? It's like to really participate and to show up, right? And in some ways it looks like they show up for themselves, right? When they feel they're a certain habit or behavior or something like that they're like, I gotta check this, they check themselves, right? And that's what we really want. We, in relationships, when we go through these challenges where we're growing beyond our comforts, we're learning new things, we're taking on a new study, right? We're advancing what we already know and we're applying it, and we're having a new adventure, right? We're not so much about checking each other. We're holding space for basically them to check themselves, and that's the greatest mastery, right? Is you just hold space and you just kind of like, you just like, hello, and they check themselves, right? And you check yourself, right? And that in many ways creates these qualities that the inner child already really has, which is patience and tolerance and gentleness and compassion and willingness to listen, right? And also willing to have boundaries, right? To really be clear, like, you are your own healer, right? I am my own healer. I am here to help you, right? I'm here to serve your infinity, but you are also here to initiate yourself. I can't initiate you. You have to self-initiate, because that's your personal power that I can't give you your personal power, right? I can inspire you, but you have to make the decision, right? So there's a sense of freedom, and there's a sense of like, that's what Papa Bear and Mama Bear is like, you have your freedom, baby bear, like to explore the world, but we will, hold space for you, right? And we will be a voice of reason to come in to help you to get out of, anything that's self-destructive, right? That, will have you in something that is not going to raise your self-worth, it's not going to raise your self-esteem, right? Because Papa Bear, Mama Bear is like, you are here, that inner child is the most inspired state of us, the most like positive really state within us. You are here to not only believe in yourself, but you're here to build up the character you need to actually make it happen, right? And that's why you're going to need to study. You're going to need to learn. Sometimes it's not going to be easy. Sometimes you're going to have to be by yourself, and you're going to have to muscle up the strength to figure it out on your own. But if you keep going with it, you will be able to gather all of this this rich knowledge, or this rich information that you've gathered through your participation with your own growth, that you will be able to experience what we call we have self-destruction, but then self-creation, where literally you are self-creating with this person, they're self-creating, and that will show up as reinventing themselves, and you're reinventing yourself, and you're supporting each other's sort of dreams, and helping each other to really evolve intuitively, instinctually, right? So that you both individually can step more into your personal power, more into your trust in the divine, and more into your creativity, your ability to trust and to believe, and to build up a quality of life that is able to really establish that creativity in a physical form, in a relationship form, in a sort of a form that gives you fulfillment, right? So I just wanted to share this with you all, and thank you. Satnam.